Test. Hi there. My name is Bava. I think I've always wanted a YouTube channel, but I'm starting one now. I've just watched so much YouTube in my life, and I've learned so much from it. I've discovered so many cool things on YouTube. I guess it's, I have my selfish reasons, of course, but I think one thing I want to do is also give back to YouTube. So, congratulations. I do have some plans, actual concrete plans for this YouTube channel. When people ask me, this is a whole bunch of ideas that I have, but they're all a little too ambitious and a little too intimidating right now. And I think just talking into the camera is already something that I'm getting in my head about. So this is just me trying to get out of my own head. What I thought is I'd talk about what's on my mind recently. I think that's what they call a vlog. I'm a UX designer, and so I work with technology, with some of the newer technology that we're seeing, AI. I also get to see a lot of people interact with this newer technology, work on this newer technology, and I see the attitudes that people have around it. And so I reflect that back, and I then think about the attitude that I have towards technology. It's difficult to think about, especially because technology is being developed in the way that it is being developed. And so there's obviously some internal conflict. And I've been reading this book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I read it a couple of years ago, but I picked it up last week again and started reading it from the beginning. And there is a plot that gets stronger and more prevalent in the book as the book goes on. But at the beginning, at least, it's these long rants on these philosophical rants about technology and people's attitudes towards it. And the way the book starts is the narrator, it doesn't have a name, we don't know his name. The narrator is on a bike tour with his son and two of his friends. I think they're a couple, John and Sylvia. Now, John and Sylvia, this guy is really frustrated with them because they've been biking, they've been riding for so many years together, but they don't seem to want to engage with the motorcycle as a technology. They don't want to get their hands dirty. They don't want to do the basic maintenance, check the lights, tune the brakes, or whatever one does with motorcycles. And this is very frustrating to him. He doesn't understand it, the narrator. And he spends quite a few of the first few pages trying to understand why that might be the case. And he doesn't understand it for a while. But at some point, he realizes that it's not the motorcycle that they're afraid of or that they're resistant to. It's all of technology. And he realizes that, so I'm just going to quote, or I'm just going to read this out. They talk once in a while in as few pained words as possible about it, or it all, as in the sentence, there's just no escape from it. And if I asked from what, the answer might be the whole thing, or the whole organized bit, or even the system. Sylvia once said defensively, well, you know how to cope with it, which puffed me up so much puffed me up so much at the time I was embarrassed to ask what it was, and so remained somewhat puzzled. I thought it was something more mysterious than technology, but now I see that the it was mainly, if not entirely, technology. But that doesn't sound right either. The it is a kind of force that gives rise to technology, something undefined, something inhuman, mechanical, lifeless, a blind monster, a death force. Something hideous they are running from but know they can never escape. There's a little bit of self-awareness here. I'm putting it way too heavily here, but in a less emphatic and less defined way, this is what it is. Somewhere there are people who understand it and run it, but those are technologists, and they speak an inhuman language when describing what they do. It's all parts and relationships of unheard of things that never make any sense, no matter how often you hear about them. And their things, their monster, keeps eating up land and polluting their air and lakes, and there's no way to strike back at it, and hardly any way to escape it. This is how he thinks they feel about this technology. And I think this attitude is still prevalent, and it's very understandable. I think it's getting even more difficult to resist this attitude because of how quickly these things are developing. So there's this added burden of needing to keep up and knowing with a real certainty that you will not be able to keep up. He continues later, cliches and stereotypes such as beatnik or hippie have been invented for the anti-technologists, the anti-system people, and will continue to be. But one does not convert individuals into mass people with the simple coining of a mass term. John and Sylvia are not mass people, and neither are most of the others going their way. It is against being a mass person that they seem to be revolting, and they feel that technology has got a lot to do with the forces that are trying to turn them into mass people, and they don't like it. So far, it's still mostly a passive resistance, flights into the rural areas when they are possible, and things like that, but it doesn't always have to be this passive. But then there's this interesting last paragraph of that passage and of that chapter, actually. He says, I disagree with them about cycle maintenance, but not because I'm out of sympathy with their feelings about technology. I just think that their flight from and hatred of technology is self-defeating. The Buddha, the Godhead, resides quite as comfortably in the circuits of a digital computer or the gears of a cycle transmission as he does at the top of a mountain or in the petals of a flower. To think otherwise is to demean the Buddha, which is to demean oneself. If you can find the Buddha in the circuits of a computer or an engine, can you find it in the workings of a large language machine? This is obviously the question that we're forced to confront. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting 2026. And I think there's obviously this guilt about using this technology, and it's a paradox. I thought of this scene earlier. In The Big Lebowski, there's this scene where the dude meets Maud for the first time. I'm going to try and find this scene. And you have no idea what she's doing when that scene starts. But eventually you see that in this giant room, she's doing this painting that's on the floor. But they've set up this contraption that lets her like hang from the air and swoop down on this giant swing. And I think she's naked while she's doing it, and she's got like this bucket of paint or a paintbrush or something, and she's splattering paint onto the canvas that's on the floor, and that's how she paints. In mechanical engineering and in woodworking and stuff, there's this concept of a jig and a fixture. A jig is basically, well, there's a drill or something, there's a machine, and then it's doing some kind of machining operation on a workpiece. And the workpiece is held in place by a fixture. And the tool is guided the way it's supposed to move and operate on this workpiece. That tool is guided by something called a jig. And if you think about just making like art or drawing or something, a fixture is what holds the canvas. So an easel would be a fixture. And if you had a stencil that guided your pencil or paintbrush or spray can, that stencil would be a jig, right? And what she's built basically a jig. That swinging thing is a jig. And the convoluted point that I'm trying to make here is that what I think I would like to use this technology for is to make jigs and fixtures. So I think I want to somehow find a way to make the easel using AI or whatever newer technology comes in, but I still want to do the painting myself, I guess. And I think that's an interesting rule of thumb. I know obviously there's it's all blurry, but it's a metaphor that I find comforting, I guess, while navigating this landscape about this new technology. Yeah, I don't know. This is the kind of thing that I like to think about and talk about and make videos about. There's going to be more practical stuff, I think, coming soon, but I hope some of that made sense. I hope it made sense for you to come back to this channel at some point. See you next time.